Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum and welcome back in lecture number 20. In our previous lecture, we studied the following concepts, that is the application of Islamic finance, and we had different applications like in project financing, working capital financing, import financing and export financing. So in all these different arrangements, the concept of musharka, mudarba and murabha, they were applicable, and in project financing was also applicable for single transactions like import financing and export financing. So in these single transactions, it's quite simple. Just for the sake of that particular transaction, bank provides financing and the goods are purchased, and then according to the contribution of the Islamic financial institution, Islamic financial institutions become owner into those goods, and those goods are either exported or imported, and accordingly when these goods are sold or disposed of, the share of profits are determined as per the agreed ratio. And we also covered the working capital financing, where the running businesses, they need financing, and there were three different arrangements. For example, in the capital evaluation of the client and the capital contribution of the bank, they would determine the ratio of capital contribution. And there were some problems, like in case the size of the business is so big, so in that case valuation of different types of assets was difficult. Allocation of depreciation and appreciation of the assets might create some problems. So the next possible solution was the gross profit ratios, the distribution of profits out of the gross profit, that is after deducting only the direct expenses out of the financing. The musharka venture will cover only the direct expenses, and then the indirect expenses are not charged into that. But here the solution, that because the client has the staff, has building, has machinery and different kind of services which are also being contributed to that working capital financing, so in that musharka financing, those indirect expenses, they can be paid in the form of rent for the usage of building, machinery and the staff, or otherwise the share of the client in the total profit sharing ratio can be increased to compensate such type of indirect expenses. And the third option was the running musharka account. So in case of running musharka account, in running musharka financing, the Islamic banks creates an account for the client where the limit is set, for example 1 million. So from that account, the client can make different transactions of debit and credit. Whenever the client wants to receive any amount, the client can receive the amount from that account, and when the client receives any sale proceeds, revenues or income, and can deposit amount into that particular account. So the outstanding balance, which is a kind of investment from the bank into that particular musharka venture, will determine the capital contribution by the bank, and the daily profits will be determined, and it will be calculated based on the outstanding capital. And the third application was in case of import financing, where the letter of credit is issued from the issuing bank, that is the bank of the importer, and Islamic financial institution can perform the role of that issuing bank. So the Islamic banks, they can charge a fee for that providing services of LC, or for the outstanding balance they can become partner. They can purchase the asset by paying a price. So for the imported goods, if the Islamic banks, they pay the price, if 100% price is paid, there can be a mudarba arrangement between the client and the bank, and if the Islamic banks contribute a part of the price, so then their contribution will determine their ownership into that musharka goods that is being imported. And in case of import financing, there are two possibilities, that is pre-shipment financing and post-shipment financing. So in case of pre-shipment financing, Islamic banks, they can facilitate the client to purchase the goods which are going to be exported. So if 100% financing or the price is paid by the bank, then there will be a mudarba agreement, and if a part of price is paid by the bank, then there will be a musharka agreement, and the ratio of profit will be agreed between the parties. And the other possibility is a murabha arrangement, where Islamic financial institution finance the goods which are going to be exported. Islamic financial institution will purchase those goods, becomes owner of those goods, and the sale price will be the same price which is agreed between the exporter and the importer. So the bank already knows that against such and such amount of investment, this is going to be the profit. So based upon the profit sharing ratio, banks, they will be sure about the returns of their investments. And for the post shipment financing, because the exporter has already sold the goods, and if the exporter has not yet received the payment, so in that case some legal documents will be with the exporter, showing that exporter is going to receive such and such amount. So it might be called bill of exchange or account of any notes receivable. So in that case, discounting of those receivables notes, it is not allowed under Islamic economic system. However, Islamic banks, they can provide the service to collect those outstanding amounts from the exporters. So for that service, they can charge a fee, and at the same time, they can provide a loan equivalent to that note receivable to the client. And then it will be agreed between the client and the financial institution, that is the Islamic bank, that when the payment is received, it will be kept by the bank as a payment of loan from the client. And on the other hand, bank is going to charge service charges for the collection fee. So these were different arrangements that of applications of Islamic finance that we studied in our previous lecture. And in today's lecture, we will discuss some very interesting and very simple topics. And after this lecture, you should be able to understand the principles of Islamic investment funds. So today's topic is Islamic investment funds. There are different types of Islamic investment funds. So you will be able to understand the principles of those investment funds, how they will be treated, how they are created, and how the profits are shared. And then there are different modes of investment of these funds and their management under Islamic financial system. So we have different type of funds like equity fund, ijara funds, commodity funds, murabha funds, by al-dain, and mixed funds. So one of the word which is not familiar to you is by al-dain. It means trade. By means trade, and dain means debt. So sale of debt. So this is, as it is mentioned earlier, sale of debt is not allowed under Islamic economic system. So we will discuss these different types of funds and their names. It is clear from their name that the funds created will be used to invest in the equities and for ijara purpose, for the purchase of commodities and resale of those commodities, and for the purchase of goods and commodities and then resale on a markup or profit basis, and then sale of debt, which is not allowed, that is discounting of bill receivable is not allowed. And then mixed funds. Mixed fund would mean it will comprise all different types of funds, and there are different challenges being faced by the Islamic funds, and there are also opportunities in the market. So you will be able to understand all these topics after this lecture. So first of all, principles of Islamic investment fund. So Islamic investment funds are giant pool of funds wherein investors contribute their surplus money for the purpose of its investment to earn halal profits in strict conformity with the Shariah rules or principles. So this is a simple arrangement where the individuals, they have savings with them. So under conventional economic system, the savings are deposited in interest-bearing accounts, and there is no risk against that. The depositors, they receive a predetermined rate of interest at the regular intervals whenever they want to withdraw their money. So their money will earn an interest for the time period it was deposited into that account. But under Islamic financial system, people, they have their savings with them, so they can't earn interest on that. So now they have to invest that amount. So the banks will provide them a forum where the banks will create some funds which will be used for different purposes, and in those funds people will not deposit rather people will invest. So with that investments of different people into that particular account will create a pool of fund for that particular venture. And on the other hand, people by themselves, maybe the friends, the family members, or a group of people, they can join their pool of fund and they can allocate the responsibility to one of the persons, or they can hire the services of management, and then the managers of those funds will invest those funds in different possible options like equity fund, ijara fund, murabha fund, or maybe mixed fund. So these funds must be Sharia compliant. There should not be any activity which is against Sharia rulings. So the subscribers of funds, that is the people who pool their funds, receive a document, may be called a certificate, a unit, a share, or any other name representing the value, and will earn prorated profit on it. So this type of funds, they will be announced by Islamic banks or maybe by any managers, and then the people who invest into these funds, the subscribers of these funds, they will receive a certificate showing that the share of the subscriber into that investment fund, and such that the ratio of profit will be determined according to the capital contribution into that fund. So if the capital contribution by the subscriber is 1%, so the subscriber will receive 1% out of the profits. And the managers of these funds, they are normally the banks, and the management can share in the profit or can charge a fee for their services on monthly or annual basis. Now the managers, which may be a bank or maybe the individuals with some credibility, or maybe some business organizations, or maybe the group of people who are going to manage such funds, they will earn something out of it as a fee, or maybe they become partner into that account, into that pool of funds. So the relationship will take place in the shape of mudarba, being the managers of the fund and the depositors into the fund, or the subscribers into the fund being the capital provider into that fund. So the managers, if they want to become partner into such operations, there will be a relationship of mudarib and the capital provider, and there will be an agreed profit sharing ratio. And the returns, they are tied up with the actual profits earned or losses suffered. So the returns, they are not made sure, there are no guaranteed return in such cases. The returns, they are the actual profits, and it will be distributed according to the contributions by the subscribers. And in case of loss caused by the negligence on the part of management, compensation will be provided by the management. So if the managers, they did not operate it according to the terms and conditions, there was some misconduct or misuse or some frauds, so such losses will be recovered from the management. And if the losses, they were out of the natural reasons, in that case the capital providers would be responsible to absorb losses according to their capital contribution ratios. And the funds raised must be invested in Sharia approved activities. Any activity which is against Sharia ruling should not be financed with such funds. And there are different operators. Mostly the banks, they operate such funds. For example, UBL Sharia Stock Fund, United Bank, they operate such funds. They get funds into a particular account from the depositors, from the investors, and then those funds, they are used to purchase the stocks of different companies, and dividends and the price appreciation of the stocks, they will determine how much is the income out of this investment, and then it will be distributed among the subscribers, and the bank might charge a fee, or according to the agreement, according to the prospectus, which will, wherein all the principles, all the rules and regulations will be mentioned, the bank might charge a fee, or bank might become a partner in a role of mudarib, and they will share a profit. And also United Islamic Income Fund, then Habib Bank Limited Islamic Money Market Fund, they operate in the money market, and they might have a portfolio of investment into different stocks, into real estate, maybe any arrangement. And then HBL Islamic Stock Fund, Al Mizan Mutual Fund, Askari Islamic Asset Allocation Fund, and it is countless numbers. If you go to different websites like maybe Bloomberg, you will find a countless number of such funds being operated under the conventional system and also under the Islamic financial system. And we have different modes of investment like equity fund. The funds which have been created maybe by any bank, suppose Mizan Bank. So if it is mentioned in the prospectus that it will be used to purchase the stocks, and the funds will be invested into the stock market, then it will be called an equity fund. And then if an asset is purchased with those funds and it is leased, then an ijara fund will be there. And if it is for the commodities, according to the terms and conditions mentioned in the prospectus of that fund, it will determine what is the nature of that fund. And likewise Murabha fund, then mixed fund, and by Ad-Dain, which is a debatable topic, and with the majority of scholars, they think this is not allowed. So first of all, we will discuss the equity funds. So equity funds are invested in giant stock companies. So as it is clear, it is invested in equities of the companies, in the shares of the companies. And profits are generated through trading of shares in the stock market and the dividends. So when the managers, they feel that the stocks of a certain company have the potential of profit into it, so they will invest into those stocks, and with the price appreciation, they will earn some profit out of it. And maybe they will get dividends from that company. So the dividends and price appreciation, they are the incomes out of the equity funds. And it is prohibited to invest in stocks of those companies that are involved in activities not approved by Sharia. Now come the limitations. So we can't invest in all type of companies. The companies which are engaged in such activities which are not allowed by Sharia, so we cannot make our investments, we cannot invest our funds into the equities of those companies. For example, companies manufacturing, selling or offering liquor, pork, haram meat, are involved in gambling, nightclub activities, pornography, prostitution, are involved in businesses of hire purchase or interest. So the companies where the main business is such that it is against the Sharia, so the fund managers, they cannot invest into those companies. And if they have invested into such companies while their operations, they were legal, they were Sharia compliant, and later on that company changed its business from halal activities to haram activities, so in that case the fund managers, they should take out their investment out of that company, and those number of days when the business was operating haram activities, the returns of those days should be deducted out of the income of that funds. And if a company is doing halal business but earns income from haram sources as well, for example, it is a common practice by the companies, they deposit their surplus funds into interest bearing accounts or into some securities where they earn some interest over it, into some short-term securities, maybe in the securities where the maturity period is 3 months or 6 months or less than 1 year. So in that case, a part of their income comes from haram sources, that is interest income. So what should the investor do in that case? If the investor, being a fund manager of Islamic denominations, that is, suppose in case of equity funds, the fund managers, they should raise voice against such activities in the annual general meeting of the company, because the company's main business is halal, but they are earning a part of their income from the haram activities. So in that case, they should raise their voices against such activities, and they should avoid investing in companies where the income from haram sources exceed 5% of the total income. Now the scholars, they have their consensus that if the contribution of haram income in the total income is 5% or less, then the Islamic investment fund managers, they can invest into those companies, but out of the returns of that companies, 5% will be deducted and it will be given to some charitable purposes. And then deduct the portion of haram income from the profits earned and give it to charity. This is called purification. So when the returns which are not allowed under Islam, that is, it should be 5% or less than that. So in that case, deducting of those returns from the income of the funds, it is known as purification. And the limit is that where the stocks are, where the funds are invested, those companies should have their non-Sharia compliant income less than 5%. If it is more than 5%, it is not allowed to invest into such companies. But the main business of those companies should be Sharia compliant, and they should only be earning haram income out of their small activities like earning interest income from the deposits into the banks. Now further discussing the same topic, that is conditions for investment in shares or stocks of different companies. First of all, the main business of those companies should be Sharia compliant. They should not be involved in any haram activities, as mentioned previously and also mentioned here in this slide as well, that those companies should not be involved in selling or offering liquors, pork, haram meat, gambling, nightclubs, pornography, narcotics, such things. And business should be halal, like automobile, textile, any business which is halal, where the activities of the business, they are Sharia compliant. The companies selected for investment should be like that. And the company's total short and long-term investment in non-permissible business should not exceed 30% of company's total market capitalization. And the companies where the investment fund managers, they want to invest into their stocks, those companies should not have their investment in short-term or long-term, which is in such activities which are not allowed under Islamic economic system. So their total investment, short-term and long-term, should not exceed 30% into those activities which are not Sharia compliant. Now what is the logic of this 30%? The basis of 30% is that the 30% is less than 1/3 of the total asset of the company, and 1/3 has been considered abundant by the following hadith of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam once said that 1/3 is big or abundant. So it means if there is some figure of 33%, it will be considered as big and considerable amount. So in this case, where the investments of the companies into such activities which are not allowed under Islamic economic system, if their investment in short-term and long-term is less than 30%, then it is not a considerable amount. According to the scholars, they think that amount is not a considerable amount. So if it goes to 33%, then it is a big amount, it is abundant. So if it is less than 33%, so the scholars think this is not a big amount and it will be considered as insignificant. So in such companies where the short-term and long-term investment is in less than 30% into activities which are not allowed under Sharia, then it is permissible to invest into stocks of those companies. And the shares of a company are negotiable only if the company owns some illiquid assets. And if the companies, they have only liquid assets, it means the share value should be exactly at par. If the fund managers want to invest into companies where the illiquid assets are not there, so in that case, liquid assets mean cash. So the cash would be represented with the par value. So if the par value of the asset is 100 rupees, so it can only be traded at 100 rupees. Otherwise, if any increase or decrease in the price will constitute riba, because there are only liquid assets as a backup. There is only cash as a backup. So the transfer of trading into cash and earning something on it, it is not allowed. And now the question is that when the firms, they have liquid assets more and illiquid assets very small amount, then how much proportion of illiquid assets should be there? So some scholars are of the view that ratio of illiquid assets must be 51% at least. So if you want to invest into companies, the illiquid assets of those companies should be more than 51% or should be equal to 51%. It should not be less than that. If the share of liquid and illiquid assets are 50%, in that case that company doesn't qualify to be invested. And then some other scholars are of the view that even if the illiquid assets of a company is 33%, so as per that hadith, 33% is a significant portion. So in that case, the investments can be made into stocks of those companies. So its share can be treated as negotiable. The basis of this view is a well-known hadith that means 1/3 is a big or abundant. So this hadith is derived from Tirmidhi. And the third principle of the Hanafi school is that whenever an asset is a combination of liquid and illiquid asset, an asset comprising liquid and illiquid asset means the stock or the share of a company, the company has liquid and illiquid assets. So in that case, it can be negotiable irrespective of the proportion of its liquid part. So here the view is that if the share price represents a liquid portion and the illiquid portion, so in that case that share can be traded into the market provided that following conditions are met. So the liquid part of the illiquid part of the combination must not be an insignificant quantity. The illiquid part should be some significant quantity. It means that it should be in a considerable proportion, and then the price of the combination should be more than the value of the liquid amount contained therein. So suppose the share price is $100 and there are 75% of liquid and 25% of illiquid assets. So the share price should be more than the $75. What does it mean? That 75% represent the liquid assets plus any value will represent the value of illiquid assets. So this example will make it more clear that if a share of $100 represents $75 plus some fixed assets, that is 75% is liquid asset and 25% is illiquid asset. So the price of the share must be more than $75. So if the price of the share is fixed at $105, it means out of this $75 are exchanged with the $75 of liquid assets of that company, and then the $30 they are the price of the fixed assets. And conversely, if the price of that share is fixed at $70, it means it is not even considering the liquid part only, that is $75. So it will not be allowed because $75 owned by the share are less than $75 or the 75% of liquid assets. So this kind of exchange falls within the definition of riba and it is not allowed. So riba is there when you exchange liquid assets or assets of same denomination in different proportions or in different quantities. For example, exchanging of 100 rupees for 105 rupees. So those 5 rupees they are riba. So similarly, if the price of a share in the above example is fixed at $75, it will not be permissible because if we presume that $75 of the price are against $75 owned by the share, that is the liquid assets, no part of the price can be attributed to the fixed assets owned by the share. So if the price of the asset is $75, whereas the liquid part of the asset is $75, in that case illiquid part has not been priced. So again this is not allowed. So if the liquid part of the asset is 50% and the illiquid part is 50%, so the price of the asset for suppose is $100 for price of that share, so it represents 50% liquid and 50% illiquid asset. So its price should not be equal to 50 or less than 50. Its price should be more than $50. So otherwise it will not be allowed to invest into such stocks. And then management of these funds. What will be the share of the managers, how the funds will be managed? So managers of the funds may act as mudarib. So the fund managers, when they announce a fund and they invite investments from the capital providers, so in that case the relationship between the managers and the capital providers can take place as of mudaraba because the fund managers, they will manage these funds, and out of the profits of this fund, the managers they will have their own profit, their share of profit, and it will be mentioned into the prospectus of that fund. And to act as an agent of the subscriber and charge a pre-agreed fee for services. And the other arrangement is that the managers, they will charge a fee. So now the fee can be charged a lump sum amount or a monthly or on annual basis, and fee can also be based on a percentage of the net asset value of the fund. For example, if it may be agreed that the management will get 2% or 3% of the net asset value of the fund at the end of every financial year. So whatever is the total value of the fund at the end of the year, the fund manager will deduct 2% of that as his or her fee or the remuneration. Now the Ijara fund. We discussed the equity fund. So there were so many things to be considered in equity funds, and now we come towards Ijara fund, which is quite simple. So in this case, funds or subscription amounts are used to purchase assets like real estate, motor vehicles, or other equipments for the use of leasing. So the assets which can be leased, which can be rented out, those assets are purchased with these funds, and the ownership of these assets remains with the fund, and the rentals are charged from the users. So the fund is the owner of that asset, and the users of those assets, they pay a rental amount, and the rentals on these assets are the income of the fund, and these rental amounts, they are the income of such funds. For example, if a car is purchased and it is rented out, so the income will be the rental income, and it will be the income of that fund, and each subscriber is given a certificate that is more likely to be called a skook. So in this case, the certificates which are provided to the subscribers, those certificates which they are more likely to be called as skook. Skook we will discuss in our next lectures. And sale of these skook certificates would simply change the owners in the assets. So these certificates can be sold into the secondary market, and it would simply mean the changing of ownership from one person to another person. If I have a skook certificate and if I sell it somebody else, so that person becomes owner into that particular project. And in this case, there are certain conditions of Ijara which are applicable here. So we have discussed them in our lecture number 17 and 18. Let me remind you few of that. The leased assets must have some usufruct, and the rental must be charged only from that point of time when the usufruct is handed over to the lessee. So as we discussed a lot, that the rental amount is paid as a reward for that usufruct, for that beneficial use of the asset. If the asset doesn't have any beneficial use, it cannot be rented out, and there will be no Ijara income in that case. No rental income can be derived out of an asset which doesn't have any beneficial use. So the rentals are earned only if the asset has a usufruct, and the rental income would start from the point when the usufruct is handed over to the lessee. And the leased assets must be of a nature that their halal use is possible. For example, if there is a company which is operating halal and haram transactions, or different kind of businesses which are mixed type of businesses, halal and haram from Sharia perspective, so in that case, the asset which is leased to such companies can be used for halal and haram both activities. So in that case, it is not permissible to lease the asset to such companies. For example, if there is a company which is manufacturing alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks, so the non-alcoholic drinks, they are allowed, they are Sharia compliant. So the transportation or manufacturing of these type of things, the assets, they are required. For example, if for transportation of such products, the truck is leased, so that truck can be used for transportation of halal and haram, both activities, transportation of halal drinks and haram drinks as well. So in such types, the activities, the Sharia doesn't allow to lease the asset to such companies. The lessor must undertake all the responsibilities consequent to the ownership of the asset. So the fund being the owner of asset in such cases, So all the responsibilities being an owner are with the fund. Any capital impairment or any loss or any damage to the asset will come towards the owner of that asset. And the rental must be fixed and known to the parties. Both the parties must know that what is the rental amount. So in this type of funds, management will be offered a fee for their services. It may be fixed or a percentage of rentals received. So the fee can be linked to the income, or it can be fixed and can be paid in lump sum. So the management of these funds, how these incomes they will be earned and will be distributed. In this type of fund, management will be offered a fee for their services. Fee may be fixed or a percentage of the rentals received. Whatever is the rental amount received, a percentage can be fixed for the management. And according to Muslim jurists, such a fund cannot be created on the basis of mudarba, because mudarba, according to them, is restricted to the sale of commodities and does not extend to the business of services and leases. So in case of mudarba, in other funds, the relationship of the fund manager and the investors can take place in the form of mudarba, but here it cannot take such place. Only arrangement of sharing any returns is in the form of fee or any percentage out of the rental income. And however, in the Hanbali school, one of the different school of fiqh, that is Shafi'i, Hanbali, Maliki and Hanafi. So in the Hanbali school of thought, mudarba can be effected in services and lease as well. So this view has been preferred by a number of contemporary scholars. So some recent scholars, they are convinced with that view and they think it should be allowed and it is practicable. And the third type of fund is the commodity fund. So as it is clear from the word that the funds which are pooled by the subscribers, they are used to purchase commodities, and those commodities they are sold again into the market, and the price differences will earn the profit, and those profits will be shared between the investors and the managers. So in this type of fund, the funds are used to purchase commodities and to resell them with the objective to earn profits. And all the transactions should comply the Shariah conditions, like the seller must own the commodities. So the fund, when they want to sell the commodities, first of all they should purchase it, they should own those commodities, they should become the owners of those commodities, and then they can sell it. But there are exceptions of salam and istisna, where the forward sale is allowed without being the owner of the asset. And then commodities must be halal. The commodities should not be any commodities which are not allowed under Sharia, like narcotics, alcoholic drinks, things like that. The seller must have physical or constructive possession over the commodity he wants to sell. The seller must possess the commodities physically or constructively. Constructive possession would mean when the person with a constructive possession has the right or the facility to use the asset, and it is with him or her, maybe not physically but constructively. For example, if a car is parked in the parking, it is not in my possession physically, but if I have the key for that car, so the physical possession is not here, but the constructive possession is with me, I can use it constructively. And the price of the commodity must be fixed and known to the parties. It can't be tied up with any uncertain event. So the prices must be fixed at the time of contract. It cannot be mentioned that if at the time of delivery, maybe the delivery of the commodity is delayed. So if it is delayed, in that case, if an event happens, the price will appreciate. This is not allowed. So the price is fixed at the time of contract, and it will not be changed later on. And the management of such funds can be offered a fee as their service charges, or the fee can be fixed, and or it may be a percentage of the profit. And also the mudarba relationship can also be established in this case, and the managers, they become partners into the profits as well. And the fourth fund is the murabha fund. So again, it is clear when the funds they are collected from the subscribers, of funds, and those funds they are used to invest into some murabha transaction where the client is sold a product with a cost plus profit basis, and that price is recovered in maybe a lump sum or in installments. So it's a kind of sale where the commodities are sold on a cost plus basis. This type of fund is a closed end fund, and its units are not negotiable in the secondary market. When a fund is known as closed fund, it means that fund cannot be negotiated into the market. The subscribers of these funds, they have a certificate of their contribution. So that certificate, that share cannot be traded into the secondary market because the fund doesn't possess any tangible asset. Whatever tangible asset was purchased with the funds, it has been sold. Now that asset is in the ownership of the client which has purchased that asset. We have the fund managers, they only have a promise or the bills receivables or note receivable. So from the client, the installments, they arrive to the fund managers. So there are no tangible assets. So when there are no tangible assets or there are only liquid assets, so such assets, they cannot be traded into the market except at their par value. If you want to sell these assets, you can sell them only on their face value. And the management of such fund, for the management, a fee can be offered for their services, and the fee can be fixed or it can be a percentage of the profits earned, and the mudarba arrangement is also possible to share the profits in agreed proportions. And the fifth arrangement is the bay ad-dain, that is sale of debt. If you have sold any commodity and you have to receive the payment, and you have a document, the note receivable or bill of exchange, you cannot discount that. You cannot get cash for that document because you have a claim for debt. Okay, so for that claim of debt cannot be liquidated with an Islamic bank with the decrease in its price, because whenever you discount your note, in that case actually you are discounting it at a percentage. So that percentage is an interest which is not allowed. So majority of Muslim jurists believe that bay ad-dain with discount is not allowed in Sharia, and any increase or decrease from one side is similar to riba and can never be allowed in Sharia. But there are certain exceptions. For example, the scholars from Malaysia, they have allowed this kind of sale. But according to Islamic Fiqh Academy of Jeddah, which is the largest representative body of the Sharia scholars and has the representation of all the Muslim countries including Malaysia, they have approved the prohibition of bay ad-dain. It means bay ad-dain is not allowed. The majority of scholars unanimously they say the trading of bills is not allowed, discounting of bills is not allowed. And the sixth arrangement is mixed fund. So as it is clear, mixed fund would mean the funds created will be used for different type of activities. It may be used to invest in stocks, it may be used for the ijara purpose, it may be used for murabha transaction, it may be used for the commodity sale and purchase. So in this type of funds, there are certain features and principles. A fund where the subscription amount is invested in different types of investments like equities, leasing, commodities, it is known as mixed fund. And certificates of units of funds are tradable in the secondary market. Now, the certificates which the subscriber they have with them, that can be sold into the secondary market, but there is a condition. And condition is that the tangible assets of that fund should be more than 50%. The non-tangible assets which are created because of that murabha transactions, because the assets they were purchased and then they were sold, or maybe from the commodity funds and murabha fund kind of transactions, the assets they are purchased and sold to the clients. So in that case, the assets they are no more in the ownership of the fund. But in case of ijara or equities, in that case the tangible assets are there. And if the tangible assets are more than 50%, it means the illiquid assets are more than 50% and liquid assets are less than 50%. So if the liquid assets are more than 50%, in that case, those certificates, they cannot be traded into the market. So if the liquid assets are more than 50%, it will be a closed-end fund. It can no more be traded into the market. And there are certain challenges to the fund management. For example, fund size is small. The fund managers, they create funds, but the size of funds cannot be the big. They can't attract more and more investors into those funds. So the bigger ventures, they cannot be targeted. And the returns, they are limited. Because the Islamic financial institutions, they lack in strong legal and institutional framework. So there is again a limitation. They can't have more and more products to announce for their funds, and lack in supervisory framework. There are challenges in this part as well. The supervisory framework is not up to the mark, and then lack of knowledge and understanding of Islamic funds. The public itself and the managers themselves, they are not very well aware of such type of products. If any fund is announced as a halal fund, the operators of those funds, maybe by themselves, they are not very well aware of the rules and regulations to make it a Sharia compliant fund. And at the same time, public is not made aware of such funds. Maybe none of you have ever heard any Islamic investment fund. So this is one of the challenge. And lack in research and development in the field of Islamic finance and economics. So because of lack of research, there is lack of products for the Islamic investment funds. So no more products have been designed, and this is again one of the limitations. And lack in HR development, human resource development, and training to the bank staff on Islamic banking system. Because the staff of the Islamic banks themselves, they are not very well trained as far as the Islamic financial system is concerned. So they can't handle the clients, they can't convey the message properly to the clients that this is halal, and the conventional banking, they have some haram modes as well. So the training of the staff and the human resource training is very much important. And lack of guidance and information system, because as I told you earlier, that even we are not made aware of any kind of Islamic investment funds. So there is lack of information. And lack in marketing of Islamic products and services and their introduction in the international market. Not only in the domestic markets, in the international markets, funds, they are not very much popular, or they are not famous. And lack of financial engineering, as it is similar to the earlier points. Lack of financial engineering means the development of new products is not there, and doubts about instruments used. And then the perception, even those clients which are aware of the Islamic banking operations, they have some doubts about the operations of Islamic banks. So this is a kind of challenge, and Islamic banks, they have to remove such doubts, and the public perception should be changed, and only then we have different opportunities. And the opportunity is that if the Islamic banks, they have qualified staff in the Islamic financial institution, they can provide best results. They can guide the clients well, they can introduce their products very well to them, and they can make a good comparison, a Sharia based comparison. Being Muslims, it is quite easier to convince the clients, the Muslim clients. But the lack of knowledge and lack of expertise on part of the staff, it results in some misperceptions by the clients or the customers. And the standard can be developed on the basis of efficient and effective management practices. Transparency and reliability can be increased, and interest of investors and society at large can be enhanced, and industry can be driven ethically and morally. Industry can be run effectively and efficiently, because there are so many interesting features in Islamic financial system and Islamic funds, that if we can convey the message properly to the public or to the investors, there can be more and more products, they can be engineered, they can be developed, and the returns can be multiplied, and bigger ventures, that is the infrastructure development or project financing of some big nature, they can be undertaken, and the economy can benefit at large. For example, the roads can be built, the dams can be constructed, if we can make aware the public about the benefits of the Islamic investment funds. And the future depends upon innovative instruments to enhance the liquidity. At the moment, the investors into such funds, they feel that if we invest into such funds, if we subscribe into these funds, they may not be able to liquidate them. When they want to withdraw their money, when they want to convert their certificates into cash, they might find it difficult into the secondary market. And to develop secondary money and capital markets, so the Islamic banks, they have an opportunity to develop a secondary market where such certificates can be traded, and to introduce public finance instruments. For example, the sukuk can be issued for the infrastructure, and having need of appropriate institutional arrangements, legal framework, and taxation issues. These issues are still to be addressed, and if they are addressed, so we can convert the challenges into the opportunities. And the development of human resource again is an opportunity, and products and services are available for non-Muslims also, and they are also using the same. So the operations of Islamic financial system doesn't mean that it is only designed for Muslims. These operations, they have the same attraction for non-Muslims. For example, the concept of zero interest is raised or is in the principle of Islamic financial system. But practically, if we look around the world, the developed countries such as Japan and Singapore, they have virtually interest rate equal to 0%, maybe not exactly 0, but less than 1%. And other developed countries, they have their interest rates quite less than 4, 5 or 6%. But the developing countries or the underdeveloped countries, the interest rates are very high. So it means the application of the idea of zero interest is possible, and it has some good prospects as well. So in this lecture, we covered different aspects of Islamic investment funds. There were some principles of Islamic investment funds, that the investment should come and it should qualify the capital contributions by the depositors, and then the fund managers, how they will charge their fee, and the activities of these funds should be Shariah compliant. The assets which are the subject matter of that funds should be Shariah compliant. If it is into the stocks of different companies, there were issues of haram income into their net income, and there were issues of their business operations, and we covered them all, particularly under the equity funds. And in Ijara funds, we discussed that the fund managers, they will get funds from different companies, different individuals, and they will purchase the asset for the purpose of leasing it out and earning rental incomes. So the depositors, they can be the individuals, and they can be the companies as well. For example, in our conventional economic system, the businesses, they have their surplus fund, and what do they do with that? They deposit those funds into bank accounts or into short-term securities to earn interest on it. So those deposits can be attracted into some halal operations through the Islamic investment funds. And we studied the commodity funds, where the funds raised by the depositors or the investors is used to purchase some commodities, and with the purpose to resell them in the market with some higher price, and the price differential would determine the rate of interest, and then it will be distributed among the investors. And also we covered the Murabaha funds, where the funds are used to purchase the asset with the intention to sell it to a third party. And this particular mode can trigger with the requirement or need of the client. For example, if the client needs a particular asset for the business, so in that case, the bank can arrange fund management for that particular transaction. So the bank will invite funds from investors, and then the asset for that particular client will be purchased and it will be sold to that client. So in this way, these products, these funds, they can be created, they can be designed and structured for financing of particular activities. And then we studied that by ad-dain, that is sale of debt, it is not allowed under Islamic economic system. However, in Malaysia, scholars, they have allowed it, but the majority of scholars, almost all of them, including the Malaysian scholars, unanimously has declared that by ad-dain, that is sale of debt, is not allowed. And then we study the concept of mixed funds. It means that the funds created, they are not specifically mentioned in the prospectus for a particular kind of activity like equity, ijara, commodity or murabha. Rather, that fund can be used for different investment purposes. It will be used to invest in equities, it can be used to invest for ijara, it can be used for the commodity funds and murabha funds. And then the instruments or the certificates of mixed fund are negotiable in the market with the condition that the tangible assets should be more than 50%. So in case of commodity funds and murabha funds, in case out of mixed funds, if the more than 50% of the assets or the funds have been committed in commodity funds and murabha funds, so in this case the assets, they have been delivered to the client and the fund managers, they only have a claim of debt. Now that claim of debt is not a tangible asset. So in that case, the liquid and illiquid assets, they are determined, and if the illiquid asset, that is the tangible assets, they are more than 50%, only then that certificate can be traded into the secondary market. And also we discuss some of the challenges being faced by Islamic funds, not only particularly by Islamic funds, but overall Islamic financial institutions face such type of challenges. And these challenges, they are actually the opportunities of Islamic funds, of Islamic banks. So if the Islamic financial institutions, they can cope up with some these challenges, they can convert them into opportunities and they can claim a bigger share in the total industry of the Islamic financial institutions in the world. And this is all of our today's lecture. Inshallah, we'll see you in the next lecture. Till then, Assalamu alaikum.